Hello, everyone. So this is the session 2.2 mini lecture of entrepreneurship. And today's topic is pathways to entrepreneurial ventures. So in other words, there's more than one way that if you've got a business idea, you can actually get it started. Um, let's go on. And in fact, oops, as evidence here, you might have a business venture. You don't necessarily have to create this on your own or start a company on your own. You can actually buy an existing business, something that's basically very similar to what your idea is, or you can obtain a franchise, an existing franchise with a franchisor who is offering a business idea. So we'll go into detail for each pathway, and we'll discuss some pros and cons about each one. Well, before we go on, I wanted to show you some trends in creating business opportunities. So these are emerging opportunities that are ongoing in the Australian market as well as other markets around the world. The first is organic food. So there's a high demand for foods that don't have pesticides, that were naturally grown, for example, without any chemicals, especially. There is a strong demand for alternative energy due to climate change. So solar energy is quite popular and in demand. And you might, however, ask me, okay, so solar energy is in demand, but if I'm a small businessman, how do I capitalize on this particular opportunity, knowing that I know nothing about solar panels or know nothing about solar energy? Well, I'll tell you, give you a little tip. Now, if you've got solar panels on the roof of your house, you will need to clean those solar panels every year. And although it's actually easy to do this, it's not something that you would want to be doing on your own if you're a homeowner. And there's an opportunity for perhaps businessmen to knock on the door of a house with a solar panel and say, when was the last time you cleaned those solar panels? Knowing that if you clean it well, then the energy you get from it is more efficient if you do that. So healthy food, a very similar trend to the trend for organic food. And of course, exercise and yoga, physical fitness is a big thing. Are there any ideas you can gain from this? Can you actually make money if you provide online training exercises, for example? Or what's in vogue right now is if you're a well-known celebrity, and you might have a training program on your own, can you actually sell this training program for a fee? Now you might say, well, I'm not a celebrity, so how do I get into it? Well, you don't have to be the celebrity. You can hire a celebrity and basically get them, of course, with your inputs, to create some sort of an exercise program which can be sold using their names. Exotic salads. There is a small store. It's a chain of takeaway shops actually in Melbourne right now called Blue Bag. And in that store, they basically sell salads, but it's freshly made. It's done while you wait, and it's very quick at the same time. So it's a wonderful idea, and it capitalizes on this demand for healthy but exotic salads and vegetables. Um, Another ongoing trend right now is networked kitchen appliances. So in other words, kitchen appliances that are actually connected to the World Wide Web or the internet. I've got a robot vacuum cleaner, and basically I can actually switch it on even if I'm in the office. So if I'm in the office, I want to clean my house, I simply pull out my phone. Um, there's an app in there, and I basically tell it clean now. I can even tell it where in the house to clean. I don't, for example, I want only a certain portion of my house to be clean. I can um, um, have it clean in that area only. So some of these ideas, again, you may not necessarily be the maker or the inventor of these appliances, but perhaps you can sell them. You can actually buy these gadgets and then properly sell them to homeowners and tell them how to use it. And basically that, again, is more like a distribution sort of business. Another big trend, again, I'm not going to go cover all of these trends. I'm just plucking out a few that can perhaps give you some ideas. Pet ownership is on a high. There's a lot of people with pets. I've got a dog myself, and you'd be amazed on the amount of money I need to spend to keep my dog healthy. I spend more money on veterinaries than my own doctor. um, I need to have it vaccinated, my dog. I need to care for it. I need to clean it. I need to give it a bath. And there are many solutions that basically can help pet owners because it's quite demanding. So I bring my dog to a place where I can give it a bath. You might wonder, why not give it a bath in my house? Well, there are certain advantages of bringing it outside. Number one, you don't struggle with the equipment. There's always a blow dryer. There's a basically a machine that you can apply the shampoo for the dog in a good way, and all of this is coin operated. So it's a wonderful business idea. And again, you don't have to create the business from scratch. You can actually buy a franchise and do that business from an identified area, which perhaps there are no businesses like that in that area. Another big thing right now is for human resources is matchmaking. So um, websites like Seek connect the job seeker with the recruiter. But then there are other HR services, like, for example, Airtasker, where a person can actually offer his services to another person who's looking for this service. So I'll give you an example. If you might want to try uh, driving around or giving a tour to some tourists, for example, and you can offer your services on Airtasker, and a tourist that's coming in can actually search for hire vehicles very easily. They have this impression that they're going for entrepreneurs, and therefore it's not quite as expensive as a for hire vehicle. Okay, so just some ideas that you could use. Hopefully, you guys have formed your business idea by now, because as the weeks go by, we will really be having a look at that business idea and working with it. You need to be thinking about, if you've got the business idea, what is its competitive advantage, etc. All right, examining the financial picture when creating new ventures. In other words, we need to know the upside. In other words, how much can we make from this business venture? Of course, this can be starting with estimates, and also we need to know how much can we possibly lose if things don't go by our plans. How much money will the enterprise take if all goes well? How much will it gross if operations run as expected? But then also, how much will it lose if operations don't work out that well? So in other words, we need to determine what the risk is versus what the reward is. So, and that means actually pushing some numbers and figuring out what are the possibilities and how much can I get out of this. So basically, that is the importance of getting an adequate return on the amount of money we are risking or investing. Okay, so in your lecture notes, you'll see this slide, which gives you an idea on how to add up some figures to come out with an estimate on how much money you will need, how much cash you will need to start your business. What I've done is I've created an Excel sheet, and I hope you can see that well. And this is just an estimate, and I just created this in a couple of hours. It let's assume that I've got an eBay business, and let's say I am buying rare Indonesian furniture from Bali, for example, and I'm selling it on eBay. So um, I need to make an estimate on how much money I'll need. So I'm gonna probably enlarge that a bit. Okay, so I need to pay myself, and that's going to enter as part of the expenses. And I've just put in a figure here. Let's say I want to pay myself $80,000 a year, which is a a good manager's salary, perhaps decent, but not too expensive and also not too cheap. So I put in $80,000 and then divided that by 12, um, 12 being the number of months there are in a year, to come up with a monthly estimate. And as the book will tell you, our textbook is saying, generally you want to have set aside cash equivalent to 3 months of the salaries or the expenses that you need. So I'm going to multiply that by 3. So basically 6,600 multiplied by 3 over 3 months, in other words, I need about $20,000 in cash um, to represent salaries of the owner, of course. Then I'm saying I'll probably need 2 employees. So I'm going to pay them as such. You might say, how did I come up with that? This is, again, just out of the blue. $20 an hour times 7.5 hours a day times 23 days in a month. And so basically, that's the salary I'm estimating for my employee. And again, I will multiply that by 3, and I have 10,000. Rent will be, say, $400 a week for a warehouse that I'm renting somewhere in the Dandenong ranges, or sorry, not Dandenong range, Dandenong suburb. Um, and I'm assuming it's just not that big a warehouse, but I'm spending $400 a week times 4.5 weeks in a month. That's 1,800. Then multiplied by 3, that's 5,400, and so forth, so on. And I'm going to go into too much detail. This amount might be quite high, and we can assume that that's basically how much I'm spending to buy these furniture from Bali and then bringing them over. That actually might be a little small, but that's just an estimate. And again, it's just out of the blue. So I multiply that by 3 again, 3 months worth of supplies. Um, Mobile phone expenses, insurance expenses, utilities include gas, power, what else? Gas, power. I think that's it, right? Yeah. So basically, those are your basic utilities. And then miscellaneous, so I might need some expenses. I'm not sure exactly what they are, so I'll just put a round figure in there, $500. So I have all of this cash that's needed to maintain what we call our operating expenses over 3 months. And I might just add to that some of the startup costs, a one-time startup costs that I may need to do. So I buy furniture for my office, buy some equipment like a computer, what have you, and I spend about 5,000. I need to decorate and renovate the office and the warehouse that I have, so I need to spend about 10,000 for that. And then an inventory, perhaps I need some amount of furniture that I first bring in before I start selling. So I need that, so that's, when people order, I can basically provide the product right away by keeping a good inventory of about maybe 3 months worth. Um, some utilities demand deposits, so like a 3-month deposit. For example, rent. If the person that I'm renting from might say, I want 6 months worth of rent as a deposit. So I need to provide for that. Business license, and again, other expenses, I might add that up. So on Excel, I've been able to sum that up. By the way, it's a good skill to have using Excel. And I can easily add this up very quickly. And I find out that I probably need about $130,000 in cash to be able to start this furniture business I have on eBay. And I'm assuming, by the way, that I'm going to sell roughly $300,000 worth of furniture in a year. Again, you need to have, I didn't provide it here, but you need to have your estimates on how many pieces of furniture do you think you can sell every month, and then you multiply that. Assuming, of course, that the first few months, because you're starting out, you probably won't sell that much product. So that's just an example of creating a initial business statement that adds up all the needed costs that you'll need cash for. And by the way, that would be the investment needed. And if you don't have $130,000 lying around, which of course many people won't, then that's when you look for an investor, somebody who could invest with you, or borrow money from the bank. The problem again with borrowing money is you carry the risk that basically that business might fold up. You have to pay interest, and if the business folds up, then the bank will go after your collateral, and it's not a good idea to be mortgaging your property, say the house that you live in, as a mortgage, because then if your business folds up, then where do you live, right? So okay, so the next slide is advantages of acquiring an ongoing venture. So as I said before, you don't necessarily have to create this business from scratch. You don't have to, go on it on your own and not knowing exactly what you need to do. There are some people who might be selling their businesses, and of course, then it might be a good opportunity for you to buy it. So again, my example might be, do I create this furniture business on my own? Or maybe I can find someone who's already in business and doing it, and maybe he's interested in selling his business. So the advantage, of course, is there's less fear about a successful future operation, knowing that the owner has put in, hopefully has put in some effort to improve his brand, and therefore there's a bit of brand reputation involved. He may have already a list of customers that he's regularly doing business with. So basically, you've reduced your time in development for this business, and of course, the effort in researching and finding suppliers, etc. That can all be part of this purchase deal. And fingers crossed, you can negotiate a very good price for the business that you're buying. Then again, this could be an interesting or an avenue for you to use. Having said that, though, very few people who are selling a business will sell it at a good price. A good price for them, but not necessarily for you, the buyer. Um, if you're lucky, maybe the business owner is just tired and wants to retire. It might be a really good business, but he doesn't have any people he doesn't have any kids, for example, that can take over the business, or he's just eager to just rest and give that to someone. Or maybe you've got an idea in mind that if you buy this business, you can actually multiply its potential because of your own strengths and your own assets. So when you're thinking of buying a venture, you need to evaluate it. You need to look at the environment on how it's operating. Um, you need to look at of course, its financial data. And then you also look at the assets of the venture, if they have any assets. And these are some of the things that you need to look at before making a decision to purchase the venture. Uh, Fairly recently, although this is not a small business example, um, Westfield Malls, which used to be owned by the Lowy family, was sold, and they sold these Westfield malls to a global shopping center developer. And it's interesting because they actually foresaw that this environment, the retail environment, is actually going down, and that's why they sold it. Um, Now, I'm not sure what the buyer thought about it, thought about why he's buying all the Westfield malls around Australia. But that's one consideration. If we know that the business environment is going down, that's usually, especially the retail business environment is going down, then that's usually a great reason why they would sell the business. So if you're the buyer, buyer beware. Are you actually making a good purchase? Does the seller know something that you don't? Um, I've just thought of a really good example. A couple of years ago, the CIC, the school, was in a building over at Collins, or Little Collins Street. And there was a small cafe operating at the base of that building, at the ground floor. And of course, that's where we would buy our coffee, we'd buy our lunch there. But then one day, CIC decided to move, and here we are at Lonsdale Street. We moved from Collins. But before we moved, we noticed that the business owner, the cafe business owner, decided to sell. And certainly he was selling at a good time because he knew that the school was leaving. So he sold it to this unsuspecting entrepreneur who bought the cafe. Unfortunately, he didn't really know that he's buying a cafe thinking it's an ongoing business, but he didn't realize that there's a big school that's actually leaving that building, and therefore the expected sales, of course, would be much lower. I could argue, or we could argue, that that's probably an ethical action made by the business owner, selling the business without informing the buyer that there's actually something that's going on that will actually greatly affect the business. But again, buyer beware. Key questions to ask when you're a buyer or you're trying to buy the business is, why is this business being sold? And maybe it's because the cafe's customers are all leaving that building. What is the current physical condition of the business? What is the condition of the inventory? So he may put in that, oh, I've got $1 million worth of furniture and goods. It's there in the warehouse, and you can if the business doesn't go well, you can always sell that inventory. You make $1 million from that inventory. Well, you need to check, is that in fact true that he's got that amount of inventory on hand? What's the condition of that? They could be in very poor condition. What is the state of the company's other assets? For example, it's computer equipment, or it's baking equipment if you're a baker. How many employees will remain? Now, this is quite critical because when you're taking over a business, you might think, yeah, I'm going to hire my own employees. But remember, if you hire fresh employees, none of you will have the experience of running that particular business. And so it makes sense for you to have some employees from the old regime. That way, they can help you basically learn, what their experiences are and what to avoid into the future. What type of competition does the business face? Of course, the seller will always tell you, oh, they can't compete. There's no competition, because he's trying to sell you a business. So you need to do your own due diligence, it's called, which in other words, you check around the area. If you're buying a cafe, are there any other cafes that basically sell the same thing within that area? And of course, looking at the financial picture, and of course, whatever you get from the business owner as a financial picture, you need to try to see if that in fact is the truth. Okay, you need to have it audited. You need, ideally, an expert should have a look and check whether in fact this financial statement is true or not. So other considerations: can the seller maintain a minority interest? Now, this is a good idea, because if the seller is selling you something, you sort of want to make sure that he's got a stake in it. So if he can maintain some ownership, then there will be some motivation for him to help you out as the buyer of the business. So what companies would usually do is let the seller maintain some ownership of the company, even though it's a small share of that. Another option is to not pay him the final purchase price, or pay him in tranches. And the final purchase price will depend on the actual business performance after 3 years. So if he's promising you that you will make $1 million in 3 years, then you basically don't give him the final purchase price or the final tranche of your payment until the 3 years is up. And after 3 years, if the business actually performs very well, then you can pay him the agreed price, or you could agree on a lower price depending on what will be the actual business performance over 3 years. Be wary of unsupported promises. So again, a business owner might be promising you certain things, but if there's nothing to show except basically his promises, these empty promises, if there's no data or evidence that he can provide you, especially audited financial statements, then probably not a good idea to believe him. So again, review financial statements and determine really how much cash is actually available in that business. And does it coincide with the financial statements that business owner is showing you? The other thing you could do is, aside from interviewing the owner, of course, is interview the people that supply the business with its raw materials. You can even go and see some competitors and see what they think about the business and how they are competing with each other. You can look at customers. Are they satisfied? You can interview some of them and ask them what they think about this business that you're buying. Um, and of course, you can interview employees. A couple of years ago, I was thinking of starting a business of my own, of distributing some pharmaceutical products. And as part of my, again, what we call due diligence, is to figure out whether, in fact, the promises being made by the it wasn't a business owner, it was more of a franchisor, and he was looking for distributors who could sell his product, and I was thinking of becoming a distributor. So what I did was I went around town and asked these pharmacists and chemists on whether this product that I'm thinking of selling to them would be, in fact, a good product. And the overwhelming response was no, it was not a good product at all. So, and that prompted me to sort of step back and said, oh, I was going to, plunk down $40,000 to do this business. And then because I went around interviewing vendors and possible customers, I found out it was a terrible business. And true enough, a few months after I said no, it was a scam. We found out that the supplier of this supposed weight loss product was a scammer, and he wasn't really coming out with this product, and he was just getting money from investors. And then his plan was to abscond and fly away. Okay, franchising is a good combination of rather than doing it on your own, or rather than purchasing a business on your own, then maybe you can bring those two advantages together, and that's what the franchise is all about. So franchising is an arrangement in which the owner of a trademark, a trade name, or a copyright has licensed others to use it in selling goods or services. So a franchisee is the purchaser of the franchise. So if I wanted to do business with, say, McDonald's, and I wanted to open a McDonald's restaurant, then I would approach the McDonald's franchisor actually, and I would become, if I was granted that opportunity, I would become a franchisee. The franchisor would be somebody like McDonald's, who is actually looking for people to open McDonald's franchises or restaurants. So how it works is basically, as a franchisee, I'm the person buying the franchise and what do you call it, doing a business of it. Then I have to make a financial investment in the operation. I need to obtain and maintain a standardized inventory and equipment package, which I usually will purchase from the franchisor. And I need to maintain a specified quality of performance. So if I sell hamburgers, it's got to be to the standard of McDonald's, for example. And of course, I need to pay a franchise fee as well as a percentage of my revenues. So the more I make, the more money the franchisor receives because of that arrangement. So the franchisor, in return, in exchange for the fees that we pay him, he, of course, allows me to use the company name, which is the brand reputation. I can use logos and symbols and designs and interior designs of a restaurant and whatever facilities that come with that franchise agreement. I'd be able to use that. And usually the franchisor will help train the staff. It'll train me as the owner and the manager, but will also train the staff in basically how we operate this business. They usually will provide merchandise necessary for the unit's operation. Provide meaning I'll need to pay for it as the franchisee. Equipment, I can't just buy any equipment from outside. I need to buy it from the franchisor, and that's basically how they make money. For example, Boost Juice. If I wanted to start my own Boost Juice stall, then I might have to buy blenders and mixing machines and sinks and whatever they use to make these juices, and even the raw materials. So even the fruit might be supplied by the franchisor himself, and I pay for that as the franchisee. But the franchisor has to provide aid and guidance to ensure that everything is done in accordance with the franchise contract. So that basically the products that I come up with are within the standard that they want. And that's a whole basis for franchise agreement. So again, advantages, they provide training and guidance. The brand name has a reputation. I can use that. They usually have a proven track record, but I'll get back to this in a while. Sometimes they provide some financial assistance, but a franchise means also that I need to pay fees. So my profits will never be as good as if I was doing it on my own because I need to pay these fees. The franchisor has a lot of control in what I can do. I can't just offer basically my own products. I need to follow the list of products that they provide. I can't do my own thing. I can't create a pork hamburger because I want to. Again, that's because franchisor will have some control over that. And of course, there are some unfulfilled promises from franchisors. Oftentimes, the franchisor, because he's selling me that business idea, will tell me, "Oh, you're gonna make this much money, etc." And then it turns out, oops, oops. And by the way, when a business is losing money, you take all that risk. The franchisor doesn't really suffer much from that, except of course, the less sales you make, then the less sales the less franchise fees he makes as well because of that revenue or the royalty they call it. So here are some very popular names in franchising. IGA is a supermarket franchise. So if you want to do a grocery and you get up and use the IGA franchise, then you can use their logo but they also provide you with services like, for example, they negotiate for you with suppliers so that when you buy these things, these grocery items that you will resell, you can buy it at a very good price because of that negotiating clout that IGA provides. Um, Jim's mowing, you can be offering lawn mowing services. But if you're with gyms, then they provide you with the systems to run your business. They provide you with the kind of equipment that you can use to mow the lawn, um, and some advertising and marketing is provided by them. But gyms has moved into other things as well. I see gyms dog wash, gyms electrical testing, gyms this, gyms that. It's quite confusing as a brand. So I would say because of that confusion on what gyms is actually meaning, it's not one of those franchises that I'm very excited about. Blue Wheelers is a franchise of dog washing. So it's a mobile dog wash. So you call them up, you book an appointment, they come to your place, they clean your dog outside your home in a van of some sort, which has all the equipment necessary to clean your dog or to give your dog a wash. Burger King here in Australia is called Hungry Jack's. Um, Pizza Hut, a dying brand here in Australia. I heard Taco Bell is going to come in very soon. Domino's is quite dominant. Domino's is dominant, taking over the Pizza Hut market share. KFC, of course, you're familiar with. Subway, Macca's. Dunkin' Donuts isn't in Australia. Um, there's another donut place, I forget, that's basically tied up with 7-Eleven, and they are very big as well as a franchise. So these are some examples of some businesses that you can actually buy a franchise from. So that's it for today. And again, please review the complete slides, knowing that this is just a shortened version of this lecture. See you next time.